course, a big part of today's coverage is about remembering their names and honoring the price they've had to pay to fly the country's flag. We're watching the story from a number of vantage points, and on Saturday, the Joint Standing Committee on Defence sought clarity regarding the delay in communication about the deployment and extension of SANDF troops in the DRC. The committee highlighted that Section 201 of the Constitution requires the President to formally notify Parliament of any troop deployments. They've stressed the need for transparency in such notifications, especially concerning military engagements. The co-chair of this committee is Malusi Gigaba, and he joins us now live for his own reflections at this moment, as well as his thoughts on so many other issues to do with this deployment. Mr. Gigaba, great to have you on the SABC again. Thanks very much indeed for making time. Let me just start off on that note. I mean, is the committee aware of whether or not there's been any further deployments to the DRC?
Thus far, we have not been notified. As you have correctly indicated, the Constitution requires that if there is any deployment, especially foreign deployment, we should be notified as the committee within 7 working days of such deployment, even if it's post facto, but it must be within 7 days, so that we apply our minds, we send a report to Parliament recommending that Parliament should also approve such deployment. It is a standing requirement, and that's why we raised the issue we did, because at our discussion it became clear that previously the previous notification only reached us 8 days after the extension of the deployment in the DRC had taken place.
Sure, which, if your explanation is anything to go by, is in breach of the requirements. What does accountability then look like in that context?
Look, the committee does not seek a hostile engagement on the matter, but we do expect that all the necessary structures should be shown the respect that they deserve so that they are able to fulfill their responsibilities. And what we have then done is to write to the presidency requesting clarification on 2 things. One, this issue, because what we need is to emphasize that the presidency should notify us within 7 working days as is expected. But we also require explanation on the interpretation of a certain paragraph in that letter, which talked of reinforcement to combat rebel forces for peacekeeping purposes. So we want to understand what exactly does that mean, whether, as the conversations have been taking place, this is a peacekeeping or peace enforcement mission. Our understanding is that it's a peacekeeping mission, and therefore any communication to us should leave no doubt in our minds as to the purpose of the deployment.
Yeah. Given those conversations you've just alluded to, and some of which have been held in the committee itself, would you support, as a committee, a further deployment of SANDF soldiers to the DRC, knowing what we know now about the conditions they might be in?
Look, it's not really within our power to refuse such deployment. We can recommend to Parliament that it does. So the committee will engage, receive a full report on the matter. We are still due to have a closed meeting with the Minister of Defence and Military Veterans and the Chief of the South African National Defence Force towards the end of this month, where we will deliberate on all of these issues. We understand the broader strategic purpose of South Africa's participation in peacekeeping missions on the African continent. We understand that we are doing so as part of the multilateral program of intervention to bring about peace in the DRC. Because what we would not want to see are 2 eventualities. 1, a genocide. 2, a rebel takeover of the DRC. And so it's important for us to participate in these multilateral platforms. But as we have emphasized, we prefer that the military be not the front line of peacekeeping, but they must be deployed in order to support the multilateral dialogue that are there to ensure long-lasting peace. Because at the end of the day, the military cannot impose peace on any country. We are not there to fight the wars for any country. We are only there to help protect democracy and to protect the lives of innocent people.
Yeah. You know, of course, many people have weighed in on what we see take place. And in many respects, they're judging from just what we have heard being said in Parliament. Part of the comments that were made before the committee, I think it was a few days ago, was by the army chief who mentioned that the soldiers would have been in the country. I think it was a day later after appearing before the committee itself. That obviously didn't happen. In fact, we understand that the remains only arrived today. It does communicate, though, quite a concerning image of the army general in this particular case not really having a handle over the situation, as it were, and therefore not communicating clear messages. What's a response to that as the committee co-chair? I mean, would you say that's a fair assessment, for example? Mr. Gigaba, are you still there? Oh, what a pity. Hopefully we can try and reestablish that connection. Okay, I'm told, Mr. Gigaba, you can hear us now. Apologies, I'm not sure if you caught that question.
Yes.
All right, please go ahead.
The gist of it. I think we are going to engage on those issues with the army chief. We understand that there were dynamics on the ground. As you might not be aware, the remains of our fallen heroes had to be transported by road from Goma through Rwanda up until Uganda. And at the point at which in Uganda they were then prepared for embalmment and postmortems. Boom. We understand that it's a dynamic and volatile and tense situation. I think the army chief should have been rather circumspect in committing to the process taking place the following day, because it is a very involved process. But what I think perhaps he meant was that they, on their part, on our part as the South African military, were ready to commence with the process the following day, which is precisely what they did. But the process also depended on a number of other stakeholders playing their part to ensure that this becomes a successful repatriation. There are other countries that are also involved, including Malawi and Tanzania. So they also had to be involved in the process. We hope that when we meet again, we're going to have very serious conversations about how do we deal with matters of this nature going forward, because we wouldn't want families to wait this long and for the country to be as apprehensive as it has been over the last 2 weeks, given the dynamics of this situation.
Sure. The parliament you represent is meant to be a parliament of the people that also holds the executive accountable. But more than that, I wonder, for example, what your message would be to the families that are preparing now for a very heavy next couple of weeks as they lay their loved ones to rest, those who've died in the DRC. What's your message to those family members who say that the warnings have always been there? In fact, they've always received messages from their loved ones that they're unsafe, they're ill-equipped, and that it seems death is at the door.
We first convey our condolences and sympathies to the families. We hope that they will finally find peace and closure. And we wish that they over the next few weeks and days, as they prepare to lay their beloved to rest, they will be assured of the support of the nation and the nation's leaders. But as the committee, we are going to leave no stone unturned to ensure that we get to the gist of this and to ensure that going forward, because, you know, as much as people often say that part of being a soldier means that you might face an eventuality of this nature, but it is something we do not take lightly, because we cannot say to anybody who wears uniform on behalf of our country that at any moment we will recklessly send you to your demise. So the committee is going to undertake necessary discussions. That's why we postponed our meeting tomorrow, understanding that the minister and the chief will not be available because they are still dealing with these issues with other countries. And when they are ready towards the end of the month, we are going to have a very long, extensive and open meeting where we will discuss these issues, get to the bottom of it, find solutions and a way forward, understanding South Africa's international and particularly regional obligations.
All right, Malusi Gigaba, thanks for giving us your take on this. Of course, it's still a very sensitive moment for the families involved, and in many ways, they should be at the center of our coverage today. Malusi Gigaba, of course, is the co-chair of the Joint Standing Committee on Defense. Once again, thanks very much indeed.